Hey, good morning, everyone. Dave here from OSGTTV. Hope everyone's having a great morning so far. My name is Dave, and if you haven't been here before, we love streaming retro games, retro pinball, like virtual pinball, arcade, all the way up to current gen, kind of a huge variety of things. If you like that kind of thing, make sure to throw us a follow on Twitch, or if you're on YouTube, make sure to subscribe. Uh, we are here in part 3 of our series, and this is going to be a shorter video this time because we had a curveball thrown at us. We got the Gamestation Go from MyArcade, and we just completed kind of and posted a 2-part series, 2 of 3, I should say. We're kind of going in and looking at some of the areas that maybe didn't meet quality control or could use some improvement. We're coming out with a video afterwards of all the great features of the unit, and it is a great unit, but we're just kind of starting reverse and trying to pick out some of the things that need a little love and attention. And we had a little bit of a curveball thrown at us right before we were able to film our 3rd video. A firmware update was released by MyArcade, so MyArcade is definitely giving this thing some attention so far right out of the gate, and that is awesome. What we're going to do is we're going to do the firmware update live on camera with you guys here to show you what's involved. But before we do that, we're just going to take like 2 or 3 minutes and really quickly flip through the side loading process. They don't really advertise this on the box, but using an SD card, they do have a bunch of emulators available to you. So if you have games on an SD card, you can launch those and play them, but there isn't a lot of configuration you can do. The only thing you can really configure button-wise is in the arcade area. So if you're using like the MAME arcade games, you can do button configs in there, which is nice, but if you're using anything else, any of the other emulators, there doesn't seem to be, at least at this point, any way to change or configure any buttons. So without any ado, we're going to keep things rolling here this morning. Let's jump into the side loading just a little bit for a few minutes, and then from there we will jump over to doing the firmware update to the 1.1. Alright, so we're going to go over here and we're going to change our audio input to the webcam actually. Let's see if this works. This is kind of a last second test here. Testing, 1, 2, 3. I think we got a webcam, but I think we got the wrong webcam. You know, production issues, gonna have them, right? All right, so here we are. Here we are at the Gamestation Go, and we're gonna power this bad boy up. And we do have an SD card mounted in here, and if you have a games folder in your SD card formatted to what is it? The fat. Yeah. Oh, where's my power? There we go. Oh, so as we were saying, so if you have your SD card formatted and have a games folder in there, depending on the subfolders you create in there, you can place some games. There's a lot of reviews for doing this out there on YouTube. We're not going to cover the process. Everyone kind of knows it already. Or if you don't know it, it's really easy to find because there's 100 videos out on YouTube about it already. So it's going to notice our SD card. Let's just flip over to that. So we have a bunch of games on here. We have Atari 2600 additional games. We have 2600 that work with the paddle. We have 5200, 7800, some Lynx games, some arcade, and then we were kind of messing around with some Nintendo games to see what works and what doesn't. The main thing, and this is kind of coming off of our video, our first video here, we wanted to test how games operate outside of the console. So we're running the 5200. If you remember on our first video, the 5200
was a huge issue. Basically, if you have a point in the game where the controls are not monitored, and you do get the nice splash screen here when you sideload, which is kind of nice. But anyway, if you die, or if the program has some kind of code where it's not looking for input and you're moving the input, and then it comes back, you can actually lose control in your 5200 games, and we've proven this out in our first video that we had. So it kind of makes all of the Atari 5200 games kind of glitched. There's a little asterisk after that, right? So we're playing Centipede. You can see me moving the dial pad around here. Now I'm stuck. You know, what I've found is if you are in a point where you are trying to move the dial pad, make some movement when you die, you don't want to be moving the D-pad around. You want to get your thumb off of that D-pad and then put your thumb back on the D-pad when the game starts. If you are moving the D-pad while the game is not looking for input, it can mess up and you will have no movement in your controls. So that's kind of what I found so far. It does happen in the side loading emulation also. So if we die here and we're moving the pad around, you can see that, maybe you can't see because I died so quick. Let's try this one more time. So if you start your game, you have full control. If you die and you're moving the pad, it will lock. I can't move up or down. I'm kind of just stuck in the corner right now. And that's probably because of the emulator, a mix between the emulator and the input options that you have. 5200 had those weird analog sticks, and it's kind of hard to convert that into digital control. But now if I leave my thumb off, I have full control again. So this happens on the games in the Gamestation Go. This happens on the games that are side-loaded. It's kind of hard to get away from it. So does it make the 5200 completely unplayable? No, but you also have to know when to be touching the D-pad and when not to be touching the D-pad. If the firmware is going to help with this, I don't know. I really hope so, because it kind of really hinders the usage of playing 5200 games on here, right? So the other thing that I've noticed is if you're playing an emulator that has 2 button controls, normally you would want like the 2 highlighted buttons right here active, A and B, or X and Y, or A and X, you know, something where it's like kind of a 2-button controller feel and you can kind of spread your thumb over both controllers. A lot of the games actually have the A and Y buttons as your 2 primary buttons, and they don't really light up in the emulation. I don't know a game where I can... I think Battlezone has 2 different types of firing with the buttons here. Let's play some Battlezone 2000. Kind of a little bit of a different take on Battlezone. They've got waves, they have missions that you need to accomplish. It's kind of an interesting take on Battlezone. Alright, so you're moving, you have 2 different weapons. If we hit the normal A button, you can see I'm firing like my bomb, a missile. The other button, you'd want to be B, right? It's actually the Y button you can see is firing. So it's kind of like that in all emulators. The only emulator I've found that you are able to change your buttons is if you're playing arcade games in MAME. And the MAME games actually use like the 2003 MAME ROM set. vertical screen size is correctable, but you have to use a hardware trick to it for it, and we'll cover that real quick too. But if you hit the right trigger up here, you can actually get the typical MAME configuration screen, and you can change your inputs, which is kind of nice. So if you needed to use all 4 buttons or reconfigure them, and then the 2 shoulder buttons are active too, so you can use those as buttons. The spinner, the trackball are not active for MAME, which is kind of sad. Hopefully in the new firmware they fix this. That's another thing I'm kind of hoping for. But yeah, so let's take a game that has vertical screen. So like this game should be a vertical aspect. It shouldn't be a 4:3 aspect ratio. There is a trick to get around it, at least right now. What you have to do is reboot your, and it's kind of a lengthy fix to do it, but it's possible. We'll show you the trick here, and then we'll try this later after the firmware updates, and we'll see if this is better, worse, or other after the firmware. We actually have a huge list of items we want to check after the firmware update, so we will go ahead and test those in a separate video. So we'll take it to the point of showing you this fix. We want local storage because we want to boot up Pac-Man. We'll show you this fix, we'll do the firmware update, and then we'll come back with a full video on firmware changes that we've noticed. Right now we're going to load up this weird version of Pac-Man that is not, it's not arcade accurate, it's kind of modified a little bit. So this game right here, it's a vertical based game. It's still stretched a little bit on your screen, but it is vertical. So if you have this game running and you just kill the power on your Gamestation Go, and boot this thing back up, and then go back to your micro SD card, and then proceed to run like your MAME emulator, and then bring up like 1943 once again. You'll notice that the screen is now more vertical, kind of what you would expect and want it to be. So now the trick to this is all of your vertical games will run great. So if you had like, I'm trying to think of another one off the top of my head, you know, Pac-Man, Ms. Pac-Man, Galaga, Phoenix, you know, all these games that have vertical screens, at this point if you load them up they will play vertical. If you play something horizontal though, I don't know if I have this working or not. We'll find out. It kind of squishes it into a vertical mode. So something's overriding it. You can see Neo Geo games are not verticals based. So what we'll do is we'll boot back up, go back into the built-in games. So we'll go local storage. We'll just boot up an Atari game. Anything that's like a 4x3 game. Tic-tac-toe, 3D tic-tac-toe. We'll just boot that up. Boom. What that does is it sets your screen back. So if you power the system off, power it back on, your games will now play normal or as they were before we did the little Pac-Man trick. So that's the way around getting your screen resolution changed in MAME. I know it's kind of a hassle, but I'm hoping that will be one of the things that are addressed in the firmware update. And speaking of firmware update, let's go ahead and kick that off. And then after we do the firmware update, like I said, we'll come back with a separate video. We'll do local storage. We'll come back with a separate video on the changes that we found and spend a little more time with it. Alright, so update. There is, as you can see, a new firmware update available. Do you want to update? We want to do yes, okay for that. Network service loading, downloading in progress. Not sure how long this takes. This is the first update we have done on this thing. So the Gamestation Go does have built-in Wi-Fi access for you to access these firmware updates. Hopefully we're going to get a lot of these in the future, a lot of tweaks, maybe some game ads, who knows. You know, I don't mind putting an update on an SD card and updating that way, so I'm hoping the Wi-Fi that's on here is not just for updates. I hope they have bigger plans for the Wi-Fi. I'm not going to hold my breath, but so in the first two videos we've listed out a number of issues, anything from controls in games to trackball issues to spinner issues like in arcade games like Warlords and stuff like that, and then a lot of concerns like in the side loading of emulations. So we got quite a list off of those first two videos we did in the series. It's going to be interesting to see how much of it gets corrected in the firmware. Alright, looks like it's going through a reboot process here. Alright, so right off the bat we've got a different looking background screen. It used to be solid red. Now it's kind of like a gradient. It no longer scrolls and the whole screen kind of scrolled between selections. Now it's just an instant change on the menu. That's much better. We're gonna come back and do a complete video of all of our findings, but there's one thing we're gonna test right away before we leave. We'll test one major issue that I've had, and that is the trackball. Trackball sensitivity is very oversensitive on this whole system. I'm kind of wondering if they've tweaked anything with it. That is my first and most major concern of this system. I want to say it feels a little better. I'd have to go back to the old video and compare it. It's still a little sensitive, but you actually have to go from one side of the screen to the other. It's almost as much trackball movement as sliding your thumb all the way from the left side of the ball over to the right side of the ball. That's how far it takes to get across the screen. I want to say that's an improvement. It's going to be interesting to test this out. Alright, so that's all we got for you in this video. We'll come back with an extra video with firmware update 1.1 and all of the changes we can find based on the first 3 videos we have made for you here, and see what's been tweaked in firmware 1.1. Have a great day, everyone. If you like variety content, like I said, make sure to throw us a follow on Twitch or a like and subscribe on YouTube, and I hope to see you back.